Hey people, today we're going to be reading Chapter 3 of I Survived the Bombing of Pearl Harbor by Lauren Tarshis. Ma straightened her white nurse's cap and kissed Danny goodbye. When she opened the door, Danny heard her gasp. Danny hurried over. Ma said that there was no crime in Pearl City. Still, Danny was used to being on the lookout for people lurking outside their door, waiting to pounce. But there was nothing on their porch but a pot of pink flowers wrapped in a bow. "Goodness," Ma said. "That man doesn't quit." Every morning for the past week there had been a present waiting for Ma on the porch. They all came from a man named Lieutenant Andrew Maisel Mack. He was a B-17 pilot at Hickam Air Force Base, where Ma worked. Danny had met him a few times when he drove Ma home. He came from New York City, so Danny figured he couldn't be all that bad. But then Danny found out he was from a fancy part of New York City called Summit Place. Danny and Finn hated those rich Sutton Place kids with their chauffeured cars and snooty expressions. Danny hoped Ma wasn't sweet on this guy. She smelled the flowers and had a smile before handing the pot to Danny. Then she kissed Danny again and headed on her way. Danny could hear the humming until she disappeared around the corner. He brought the flowers on their patio around back. He sat down on one of their rickety chairs. The sun felt good on his face, and maybe there was a warm breeze off the ocean. Maybe he'd missed the smell of the air he got back in New York. It smelled sweet, like sugar cane and pineapple. One thing he definitely missed was the sound of the bells that rang every hour from the battleships that anchored in Pearl Harbor. The naval base was just 5 minutes from their house. There had to be 100 warships crowded in the harbor with their guns ready to blast away. The best were the 8 battleships. They were huge, like skyscrapers turned on their sides. Mama said that the battleship guns were so powerful, one could blast an entire house to smithereens. Danny wished she could tell his teacher in New York about these ships. Most teachers at school hadn't bothered much with Danny and Finn, but Mrs. Mills was different. When it was too hot or cold outside, Danny and Finn would offer to wash Mrs. Mills' chalkboard for her. She always said yes, and she always happened to have a thermos of lemonade or hot chocolate with enough for them. She also had a big world map out on the wall of her classroom. They could point to any country, and Mrs. Mills could tell them everything about it. More recently, Mrs. Mills had talked to him about the wars happening all around the world. She pointed to Asia, where Japan was fighting China. She pointed to Europe, where there was a maniac named Adolf Hitler in charge of Germany. He was sending his armies out to conquer every country he could. Mrs. Mills hated Hitler. "The world has to stop that monster," she told them. "He's marching across Europe, but you watch. If we don't stop them, he'll want America next. He'll want to swing a big German flag over the Empire State Building." Danny and Finn didn't like that idea one bit. And the next day they heard a shocking rumor. One of Earl's guys said that he saw a German U-boat of submarines that were sneaking around the waters just off Coney Island in Brooklyn. That did it. Danny and Finn skipped school and hopped on a subway down to Brooklyn. They sat all there, freezing on Coney Island beach, watching for U-boats. They had no idea what a U-boat looked like, but that didn't matter. Finn brought his baseball bat. If a German soldier tried to step onto the sand, Finn was ready to clobber him. They didn't spot a U-boat, but the day wasn't a total waste. When Mrs. Mills heard they'd skipped to school to protect America, she gave them both an automatic 100% on their spelling tests. Finn grinned so big he could see the gold tooth from when he broke up a fight between 2 of his little brothers. Thinking about the good times with Finn gave Danny a strange feeling. Of course, Danny never cried. He was no sissy. He learned a trick when he was younger. On those nights when he was alone in the apartment, wishing Ma hadn't gone so much, wondering what his father had left him, he'd push all those feelings down and then pack them tight together. He could almost imagine them somewhere deep inside him, a hard ball of ice, that cold, hard place that had grown so big Danny almost felt numb. But it was better than lying around and crying. Danny stood up, cursing himself for wasting time. He had to pack, write his note to Ma, get himself ready for the long journey back to New York, to Finn. But then he heard a commotion in his backyard. There was a crash, a strange squeal, and an ear-splitting scream. So that was the end of Chapter 3. Bye-bye.